Hey, what's up, everybody? This past Sunday, we started a conversation about abortion and what the Bible says, what God says about the subject. And we really just kind of scratched the surface, only talked for about 15 minutes about it. But we wanted to share a little bit more with you from Lydia, who is the director at First Coast Women's Services here at the beaches. And so what we're going to do now is just kind of go into some further conversation about the issue of abortion, pro-life, pro-choice, and what God has to say about it. So first I would ask you, obviously you've probably experienced, counseled with, and seen a lot in the time that you've worked at First Coast Women's Services. What are just some really powerful stories of kind of redemption when it comes to someone coming in, a client, and really how the story ended?
Yes, this is one of my favorite things to talk about because you really do, in this line of business, you really do need these stories to kind of keep you motivated because you see some heartbreaking stories. But one that I've experienced this past January, I'm going to call her Jane, is a client who came in and she was very abortion-minded. She had a boyfriend, but she was a vet and she had a lot of PTSD and a lot of health issues as well that she thought that abortion would be the best option for her. So when she met with one of our client advocates and went through our options counseling, we have this thing called a option box, and it's all the different options, which are abortion, adoption, and raising your child, and it has like kind of the just real testimonies to it. And so when she got to the abortion box, she left the room and went into the bathroom to cry. And so obviously we know that there was a lot going on there. And our client advocates are just so compassionate and understanding, and they really just spent a lot of time talking with her. And so we were like, okay, well, why don't you just come in for an ultrasound and see, one, how far along you are, if it's a viable pregnancy, make sure it's not an ectopic pregnancy, because then you wouldn't need an abortion if it was ectopic. So she came in for her ultrasound. She brought everything and came in, and she ended up being 20 weeks pregnant, and she just started crying again, and she said, I cannot abort this baby. I'm going to choose life, and which is so incredible. So, of course, we were celebrating, rallying behind her. We signed her up for our Earn While You Learn program, which is parenting classes, and they get points, and those points get them items like a crib and diapers. And so she comes in for her first Earn While You Learn appointment. She brings the father of the baby. He meets with one of our male mentors. And then she ended up receiving Christ with our client advocate. And it's just so amazing. And so we gave her like a new believer bag and, with a Bible. And she has just thanked us and said, thank you so much for all that you've done. I came in here the first time, experienced such depression and sadness and weight, and I feel so light and free, and I'm happy. For the first time in a while, I'm happy. And so that's definitely a win in our book. For sure. And then we actually had a client just the other day come in to drop off donations, and she had been with us 2 years ago, and she just said, there's no monetary value you can put on what we do at First Coast, and that we saved her life and her baby's life. So those are just amazing stories where you know that you're doing good things for sure.
Yeah. And you talked about those three options. Obviously, there literally are only three options. You can keep the baby, you can abort the baby, or you can give the baby to someone else. And we call that adoption, of course. Kind of just talk a little bit about the adoption option for people and what comes of that and kind of what you've seen from that.
Oh, yeah. It's so crazy. That is the one option where people are so scared of. I think more so than abortion. I hear all the time, well, I could never place my baby for adoption, but I think I'm going to choose abortion. So it's really mind-boggling, and I just think that fear has a lot to play into that. And so adoption's really progressed over the last 10 years, and it's not what you see on Lifetime movies. I think that Hollywood has absolutely ruined adoption for us, and we think that it's just like this terrible thing where the child is in an abusive family, or the birth mother doesn't want to see her child, which there's several different cases where that is true. There's three different types of adoption. The first is to close adoption, and that's where you see in Hollywood no contact with the mother, and that's sometimes the best case scenario for that child, and that may need to happen, and there's no shame or guilt in that. And the second is a semi-open adoption where you get some holiday cards, some pictures, and the third is an open adoption where you can have full contact with the birth mother, birth parents, and you can do holidays together. And so that works a lot of time with families. But what a lot of women don't understand is that you can actually pick the family that you want your child to be in. So you can pick them off of race, religion, talents, such as like if they're a musical family. And it gives that woman a sense of control where they feel like they have no control. And I think that's something that, if you're going to be for life, you should definitely be advocating for adoption.
Yeah, that's great. So there's a lot of different reasons why people might get an abortion or feel the pressure to get an abortion or come into the center asking for or saying, hey, I'm ready for an abortion. What are some of the reasons why you have seen people come and want to get an abortion?
Yeah, so what I hear most often is, I have to get an abortion. And that really makes me so sad because it's like they're backed into a corner and they feel like they have no other option. And that's why we do option counseling. We give them all their options because they don't just have abortion as an option. They have several different life-giving options, and adoption and raising your child is the two other ones. So, but what I see the most is, relationships. My boyfriend doesn't want me to have the child, or we're just not in a good spot right now to have this baby or have this pregnancy. There's a lot of, well, I only know the guy for 2 weeks. I'm not going to have a child with him. Then there's other things like my parents would kill me if they found out. Or, I'm a Christian. What will my church think? And so I really think that as Christians, as a church, we really need to change the stigma. And if that were to happen to your, someone in your church, a friend or a loved one, yes, premarital sex is a sin, and the consequence of that is, sometimes babies. And so we really need to be, we understand that you've sinned, but there's consequences, and we want to help you in choosing life and supporting life, and really rally behind that woman, that couple, because what they're doing is a great thing to have that child. So we see several different excuses all the time, and our goal at First Coast is to kind of eliminate all those excuses. So if you have financial issues, okay, let's help financially. If you don't have a place to live, okay, let's help you find a place to live. If you don't feel support from family or friends, well, guess what? You're now a family and a friend of First Coast, and we are your support. Yeah. So that's kind of our goal at First Coast.
And I think that's a really good point for us as Christians. If you're watching this and you're a Jesus follower, is one of the main reasons that people feel like they need to get an abortion is because of the fear of what people will think and the fear of judgment, the fear of parents kicking them out of the house, many times Christian parents. And it's like, how often has our judgment of or treatment of people made people fear? And so like something that we can do as Christians to help fight against abortion is not necessarily even something political. It's just not allowing yourself to be judgmental of people that experience consequences of their choices. And so like when someone comes to you and they're pregnant, you have a choice. You can respond in a way that helps them choose life and helps them feel encouraged and have some support, or you can respond in a way that makes them feel more isolated, more hopeless, more scared, more fearful. And then what are they going to do? Well, they're going to feel like, well, they reacted poorly. Or they're going to react poorly or whatever. I've got to end this so that doesn't happen.
Yeah, and we see that back in the Garden of Eden with Adam and Eve, is that, God told them not to eat of the fruit, and right. They did. And instead of just going to God and saying, God, I've sinned, will you help me? They felt shame and guilt, and they try to hide from God and cover right. up their sin. And running away from God is about the worst thing you can do, especially when God's calling out in the garden, where are you? Where are you? God's there to help. And so we really want to, imitate that of no shame, no condemnation, but, where are you? Can you come to us? Can you get help from us? It's not gonna erase the sin, but you definitely aren't gonna, be shackled in shame and fear
Yeah.
from that. And so, and also, no little girl or boy grows like thinks in their mind when they're younger, oh, I can't wait to have an unplanned pregnancy. I can't wait to have an abortion.
Yeah.
And we see all the time great, different kinds of demographics, whether it's like a Christian coming from a great family, and they end up here and they're so in fear, and that's why they make those decisions. So we always say, like, we educate people, even if they're choosing life, we're like, hey, we're going to go ahead through these option boxes because your family member or a friend may be going through this, and then you can help them.
Yeah.
And so that's really important too, to keep that in mind.
And I think there can be so much beauty when we will respond with grace and love. It's not our job to judge. And when people feel like they can come to a church or a ministry or a life group or whatever and know that they're going to be loved, even if they made a mistake or even if they're in a bad situation, they're much more likely to do it. And when they have that support, they're much more likely to make choices that promote life. And like, I was just thinking about it. Like I've had a person that's a part of this church that had an unplanned pregnancy in high school and chose life and chose to keep their baby and not that it's easy, but there's this beautiful little girl that comes out of it that I've had the chance to know, and my daughter is friends with, and all that kind of stuff. And so that's cool. And like, I have two cousins that were adopted, and that their mothers chose to keep them and then let them be adopted rather than in that pregnancy, even though they knew that they weren't going to take those children. And so like, and now like those two girls have, full lives and are part of our family and all that kind of stuff. And so there's so much that comes from that's possible if we as the church will encourage and come around people and let people know it's safe to bring your mistakes or your problems or your struggles out into the open. And I think that's a lesson not just for this, but really for all of life.
Yeah.
Go
I was
ahead,
going to add
please.
one more thing.
Yeah.
And with that, you see with the adulterous woman back in the Bible, it was the Pharisees, it was the religious people trying to stone her. And Jesus said, let the first person without sin be the first person to cast the stone.
Yeah.
And they all threw their rocks down and walked away. And Jesus reached down and picked her up and said, who condemns you? And she said, no one, my Lord. And he said, neither do I. Go and sin no more.
Right.
And I think that is just such a great representation of grace and mercy. And that woman was redeemed in that moment. So what Satan meant for evil, God can turn for good. And I think that's something to always just keep in the back of your mind.
Yeah, that's great. A lot of people will say something, people that would attack the idea of pro-life or fighting against abortion, they might say something like, well, you're really just pro-birth. You don't actually care about the child because they might grow up and have to be in foster care or, have a bad family situation or financial situation or medical condition or whatever the case is. They'll kind of put this accusation that's, well, you're really just worried about them being born, then you don't care anymore. But First Coast Women's Services and really the pro-life stance and the for-life stance isn't just about a baby being born. It's about so much more than that. So what really is pro-life? What do you think that means?
Yeah, I love that question. And when we said that, it just John 10:10 comes to mind. And then, the enemy comes to steal, kill, and destroy, but I've come to give you life and life more abundantly. So First Coast stance is to give life more abundantly to everybody, to the child in the womb, to the mother, to the father. And so we offered several different programs. We have, like I mentioned before, our Earn While You Learn program, and that's for parents who are decided to choose life, and they can come in for parenting classes that help prepare them for that, and they can get items out of our boutique for free, and then they also get points for diapers, a baby gift basket with all brand new items, and even up to a crib. So there's that. We have an adoption specialist that'll come and meet with them and kind of help them choose an adoption agency and answer their questions and act like a middleman between them and the adoption agency. We have our abortion healing assistance program, like I've mentioned prior. And then we also have a miscarriage and infant loss healing program for women who experience that. And so our goal is to really help those women. And also men play such a vital role in this discussion of abortion and parenting, and fatherlessness is one of the largest issues in our society. And so we really want to empower fathers to really lead their family. And so we have male mentors that will meet with these men, and they'll also do an Earn While You Learn program kind of thing. We call it Operation Fatherhood. And they get to watch parenting lessons too and just learn how to be a great dad. And I think if we had a lot of great or more great dads out there, we would see a new generation that's not so broken. And so we really do want to help families. We're in the business of saving three souls: the child in the womb, the mother, and the father. And so that's our goal.
Yeah, that's great. And I think a great way to think of First Coast Women's Services is really just like as a pregnancy resource center. Like you could have a 2-year-old and be a single mom or a single dad and kind of be struggling and go there and get diapers or get clothes and stuff like that. Like y'all are supporting people. Y'all are supporting life.
And then even with that, our Earn While You Learn program, they go through the pregnancy and they end up having the baby. We still have them go through that program up to a year that child's born. And if we can't help them, we are partnered with amazing organizations that we outsource to. So, it's just kind of incredible as a community. We want to really just help them as much as we can, even if we physically cannot.
Yeah. There are some, we talked on Sunday about some, one of the biggest reasons or pushbacks against pro-life, which is the idea of rape and incest. But there are more than just those two items that people say are special circumstances. Mm-hmm. I have a special circumstance that requires or warrants an abortion. Talk some about some of those special circumstances and what some of the maybe issues with special circumstances are.
Yeah. So, there's obviously like genetic circumstances, such as like a child who they find out has Down syndrome. And in fact, in Denmark, if you find out your child has Down syndrome, 100% of those children who have Down syndrome are aborted. In Iceland, it's, I think, 65%. America is 65%. And so it's like a slippery slope of where the line is of, for children with disabilities. We as the United States really want to advocate for those people that have disabilities when they're, outside of the womb, but we're not doing really anything to protect them inside of the womb. Okay, so I have some statistics here. And so from 2018 to now, 53,000 abortions have been done out of convenience. So no special circums at all. And then for social and economic reasons, there's 14,000. And then you go into emotional, psychological health of the mother, that's 1,100. And then you get down to abortions due to rape, and that's only 100, like a little bit over 100. And so there's different reasons why, but if you're the type of person that says, oh, well, abortion's okay under special circumstances, are you like that with child abuse? Are you like that with rape? Rape's okay under special circumstances. We're not. Those are, if someone said that, we would be shocked and we would be like, no. Yeah. And I think that's kind of needs to be the mindset for abortion too. What is life and when is life considered life and honored by it. So
yeah, where were those statistics? Is that just Duval County?
No, this is in Florida.
Oh, okay.
I'm sorry, in Florida. But if you're talking about Duval County, there's I think there's 4 different abortion clinics in Duval County, and they operate every day except for Sunday and holidays. And so when you factor all that in, there's 20 abortions that are done each day except for on Sunday. And so that's devastating just in like the Northeast Florida, let alone Northeast Florida, let alone all of Florida and then all of America.
Right. And I think something that Lydia said that's really powerful is like kind of this idea that like there are certain circumstances where we would say, oh, well, abortion is okay in this situation because, again, like if you, to say something like abortion for someone with a with Down syndrome or something is okay. Like we would never, ever, ever allow that to be said about someone with Down syndrome outside of the womb, living regular life. Like they're God's children. They live full lives. They have friends, family. They get married. Like they can do so many things that anyone else can do. And so for us to say, well, like I'm not sure if we should allow that life to continue is just so wrong. And it's really not a special circumstance. It's really just another reason for someone to make a decision that they want to make. But yeah, those special circumstances can become especially of a slippery slope, like you said. What are some other things? I don't really have any more questions, but what are some other things that you might want to share when it comes to the idea of abortion and what the Bible says or what churches do about it? Like what are some things that just kind of you want to leave us with?
Yeah, I think that like today's climate, I think you touched on it in the beginning, but like abortion is so politicized and it divides people to where they can't even have clear communication about the topic. And so I think that's something that really needs to change, and we need to have open discussion about abortion. Even if you are on the opposite side and you believe abortion is okay, well, why? Let's have that discussion. Let me share some stories with you, that kind of thing. Especially if you're doing your research, then you know the facts. And what I love about this so much is that, God is for life, and he has proven that with science. Like science is on our side. The world may say that abortion is totally healthy and it's fine, but science says it's not. Science says that there's some major physical and emotional risk to it that, the data says about all of it. So I just think that as Christians, we really need to be investing into this topic and trying to have an open dialogue to where people don't feel guilt or shame. And I think a lot of times Christians can hurt people with the way that they talk about this. And so that's what I'm so passionate about with First Coast, is that we're not a place to point fingers at and say, how dare you? We're here to say, hey, we understand that you never planned for this to happen. No one ever does. So let's go through your options. Let's have a calm conversation about this. Let's see where your heart is hurting. And one of the things that we say and with clients is, do you feel near or far from God in this moment? Because sin isn't just the act, it's the separation of God. And so we really want to be a place where people can really experience God and, the love of Christ. And I think so many people are afraid that when they come to a pregnancy resource center, they're just going to feel condemnation. So I think as Christians, as a church, to really support life, is to rally behind these people that are in unplanned pregnancies and to support your local pregnancy resource center for sure.
Yeah, that's great. I'm going to ask one more question. Some people might wonder, like, are you tricking women? Are you manipulating women? Are you guilt-tripping people? What would kind of be your response to that from your experience in First Coast Women's Services?
Yeah, so that is a really good question. And a lot of people have that stigma about us, like, oh, well, you're just trying to save the babies, so you're going to say and do whatever you can to get them in and just push something down their throat that they don't necessarily want to do or hear. But that's not the case. And so, in fact, we always say we don't perform or refer for abortions. We constantly are saying that on the phone, in the client session, making it really clear that you cannot get an abortion here. You can't even get a referral here. And then we're open and honest. So if we say, we're a faith-based organization, but we don't push religion down your throat. And we just try to be very clear and open and honest about what we do. But the thing is that when you're in that crisis situation, you don't always hear what we're saying. You're hearing what you want to hear. So we have a lot of women that come in here and they're like, I thought you were an abortion clinic. And with that, we're like, we're not, but the state of Florida requires a proof of verification and an ultrasound in order to have an abortion. And you have to pay anywhere else to get those things here, whereas here it's free. So why don't you sit through our options counseling. Let's talk about where you're, like, what situation you're in, where the fear is, and we'll get you those services. We'll give you that verification and that ultrasound if we can, because it depends on whether or not they qualify for it. But and so that's kind of like our hook. We don't ever try to like get women to no, sit down. You need to listen to this. But like, hey, Jesus fed his people before he gave them, the services or the speech that they needed to hear. And so we want to be able to meet their physical needs and give them their spiritual needs as well.
Awesome. All right. Well, thanks for joining us, Lydia. We really appreciate your time and all your work for what you're doing to protect life, both for moms, dads, and babies in the future generations. So thanks for joining us and sharing with us everything that you have learned and experienced in your work.
Awesome. Thank you for having me.